Hi, this is Leonard Peikoff answering questions emailed to me about Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism. I do this every week or two, depending on the questions I get and my own work schedule. If you want to ask me a philosophical question, feel free. Just send it to leonard@peikoff.com. And my name is spelled P as in Peter, E-I-K-O-F-F. Let's start today with a question on morality. Here's how it's put. For about 6 years now, the moral basis for my life can be reduced to the phrase that initiating force is wrong. Basically, this is my definition for what is wrong, as inspired by objectivist philosophy. Well, this is an incorrect statement of morality, according to objectivism. First of all, it is social. And why should morality concern only how you relate to or deal with others, whereas the much more important question is how you treat and act for yourself? Now, if you are going to concern yourself with the question of others, even suppose you started there, why pick force as the sole or the fundamental issue? Is it okay then to be unjust to others? Is it okay to follow them around begging for them to take care of you? In other words, to be a moocher? Is it okay to be a manipulator? Is it okay blindly to obey whatever they say? Obviously, there are many more moral questions pertaining to your proper attitude to others than the issue of using force against them. Force applies primarily to your treatment of others in a political context. And politics is a derivative of ethics. So the issue of social relations and how you should treat others in an organized society is not a primary, but a very derivative question. And you can see this if you ask yourself, how would you prove that initiating force against others is evil? Because you would have to say, force is the opposite of reason. Either you deal with a man by logic and persuasion, or you deal with him by force, and reason is the one you should choose. But then go on, why choose reason? And the only ultimate answer is because reason is what keeps man alive. It's his basic means of survival. Which implies what? What does that rest on? That life is the fundamental value. That life is the standard of value. And life for you means your life. In other words, egoism. So the proper ethics is an ethics of rational egoism. Whatever rationally advances your life, that is what is the good. And then you learn that there's a whole series of principles, derivative virtues that are necessary to achieve your welfare, your well-being, your survival, including independence, integrity, honesty. Ayn Rand lays them all out and explains them. And it's only in that very broad context that you then say, if I am supposed to be an entity who lives according to all these virtues, why then not initiate force? Well, obviously, that would contradict everything required by my survival. So now this questioner goes on, I don't understand why self-harm is wrong. Why is it that if you knowingly do something bad for you, for an irrational reason, mind you, it becomes immoral? And my short answer on the basis of what I've said is, knowingly doing something bad, and especially for an irrational reason, violates the two cardinal requirements of life and therefore of morality: reason and egoism. So it's a double-barreled evil. The idea of this questioner is, well, I can live my life however I feel, following whatever whims or social pressures I want, but the one thing that should guide me is don't shoot or kill others. That is a completely wrong and invalid approach to morality. If you live that way, you are going to harm and ultimately destroy yourself, and very probably in the process, you're going to shoot or use force on somebody else. Now, this questioner obviously does not know much about objectivism, and I suggest that he read Ayn Rand's Virtue of Selfishness to get a little fuller picture. Now let's go on to another question. This is a person who understands, as he explains, I only read the gist of these questions, but this person explains that he understands the importance of the virtue of integrity and that he must never alter his convictions to satisfy another person. And then he goes on, quote, however, my mother's sadness over my atheism is causing me sadness as well. I am having a hard time understanding how I can solve this emotional problem because I obviously have no intentions of changing my beliefs. What do you recommend? Unquote. Well, as stated, there is no solution to this problem. Whether your mother is sincere or not, the fact is there is a clash between the two of you over a fundamental philosophic issue. And if you have a conviction on such an issue, and you understand rationally why it is so, and another person or group don't care to understand or aren't able to understand, even when you try to explain it, that is their problem, not yours. Even if you like them, their sadness over your discovery of a fundamental truth is not a comparable thing. You can't say, well, there's one advantage and one disadvantage to becoming an atheist. Another person's emotion counter to what you know is the truth, even if you like that person, weighs nothing and should not be a problem you have to deal with. Now, if you like the person, then of course you can give the normal and appropriate expressions of liking. You're friendly with your mother. You say you can understand from her point of view. Everything is the same. It's just you won't agree with this principle. And if she's at all reasonable, she'll soon see, that there's no problem in your relationship. Most likely, and I don't know her at all, most likely she's upset because it puts her in a difficult position with her relatives and her subculture who will profess shock at her having an atheist son. But that is something you literally can do nothing about. If you start taking into account the feelings engendered in other people by your rational convictions and make that a problem of yours, you will be tortured all your life, and you will be giving yourself a good motive not to come to controversial conclusions which push you into such a dilemma. Now the questioner goes on a similar note, what did your parents think of your association with Ayn Rand? Well, this is pretty personal, but since they're both dead, I guess I can say a few words at that. My parents were both opposed, at first, to my connection to Ayn Rand, but ultimately, and especially after they met with her and got to know her, and got used to the idea, they ended up okay and even friendly with her. My father was opposed because he wanted me to become a doctor, a surgeon, as he was, and to take over his medical practice, which I had no interest in doing. My mother was basically jealous about the extent to which I admired Ayn Rand, and felt that she had done so much for me over the years growing up, and suddenly now I was exalting Ayn Rand and deprecating her in my emotions. I have to say that I encouraged my mother, regrettably and stupidly on my part, For instance, I wrote her a letter once when I was a teenager in New York. Ayn Rand had me over for dinner, and I wrote my mother a glowing account of this wonderful meal that she had cooked herself. And of course, my mother was rationally really hurt. She had cooked for me for years and years and never got a response. So her feelings were definitely hurt, and that was my incredible tactlessness. But as I say, in the end, when they saw that I was going into philosophy and that Ayn was really a great person, the problem was over. Now, a question on aesthetics. A serious novel's integrator is its theme. What is the integrator of a mystery or adventure novel or a short story? Now, I don't think you can give the, quote, theme of a genre as such, like a mystery or adventure novels. They might have many different themes, but a common one of fiction on this level is simply the battle of good versus evil and the triumph of one or the other. Detective story, for example, mystery stories are essentially a clash between the murderer and the detective. Who is going to win, or how is the detective going to make the good triumph? And the same is the idea in adventure novels of the secret agent versus the enemy. So it's a very generalized theme, but there is a theme there in the good ones. Now, as to a short story, I don't think that this necessarily has to have a theme at all. If it's long enough, it might, but a short story is by definition a single incident and its implications. It's not a series of events that need to be integrated. It's one episode, one meeting, whatever. And so it may very well simply evoke a mood or be written like an O. Henry short story, simply to present you with a twist. Now, Frederick Brown, whom I greatly admire, a science fiction and mystery writer, has written a number of short stories which are one paragraph long, and the whole thing is to end with a completely surprising and unpredictable, but nevertheless logical twist. So I don't think his story has a theme, except they're all very malevolent. So maybe you could say that's the theme, but as such, I would not say that a short story has to have a theme. Now I got a letter on politics, and as part of a long email, a Muslim gentleman writes that I fully endorse your point of view about the irrational, immoral, and even anti-religious militant insurgency in the Islamic world towards the West. I want to correct a point here. I do not believe that this Islamic militance is anti-religious. On the contrary, I believe that Islam, but not just Islam, all religions by their nature have this potentiality and ultimately necessity of being militant, that is to say, of achieving their goals by force on those who disagree. And this is true by definition because a religion is based not on reason but on faith. And faith cannot be explained. It simply has to be accepted or pushed down people's mouths, throats by force. Christianity was just exactly the same as Islam in the Middle Ages. And you can check it out and see what the Crusades and the Inquisition was like. And then this questioner goes on, he's living in Pakistan. And he says, what about people who are objectivists living in Pakistan? They do exist in Pakistan. And then he goes on to say, but you advocate the right to annihilate any country that harbors or that spreads this Islamic terrorism. Is it all right, he asks, to damage the life and property of objectivists in a rogue state to safeguard the objectivist ideas in another country? Well, you are not, in my view, going to war to save objectivist ideas. You are going to war, if you do, to save yourself after 9/11, to safeguard the United States and its citizens, whatever their ideas. And there are three categories of people in let us say, the terrorist country, governmentally sponsoring the terrorists. One is the leaders who are doing the sponsoring, and of course they are vicious and properly deserve whatever they get from us. The passive majority, who don't take a stand one way or the other, but in fact are aiding the militant terrorists by going to work as usual and producing the goods that the terrorists use. And they don't deserve consideration from us if self-defense is our concern. The only people that would be one's concern are the underground opponents of such a regime. And objectivists would certainly, presumably, be included in this. Now, I agree with you. If there were a way to annihilate a state and not touch the underground that's fighting it, it would be immoral to do so. It would be immoral not to do so. But in fact, in many cases, there is no such way. You can't target your weapons according to the person's ideas. So it'd be like the underground in France during World War II. You try to keep contact with them and protect them, but you bomb what you have to do to win the war. And if innocent people die, the fault is not yours who are engaged in self-defense, but the government of their country which have put you in the position that you have no alternative. That's it for today. If you want to know more about Ayn Rand's philosophy, go ahead and ask me a question by writing to Leonard at Peikoff.com, or if you haven't already done so, start by reading Ayn Rand's two most famous novels, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. Thanks for listening.